Hi there, and welcome to this video. This video is going to be about the design and the design method I used to build my current unit. I'll include some decisions I've had to make it work and some of my inspiration. If you look at the old unit, you can tell everything was incredibly cluttered. It was so tightly compact, you had trouble to access the units, it was very dark, so you had trouble to view the units, and I basically wasn't happy with it. I was struggling to use it. I had to rearrange it more than once. And for example, take the GameCube. It's quite a tall unit, and the shelves on it were not that tall. So in order for me to use it, I had to struggle to get the disc into the drive and close it and turn it on with all the power because it's all on top. It was an absolute nightmare, and getting the discs out was even worse. I was getting really sick of this because it was basically on a stand, a glass stand. When I bought my new TV, I bought the stand with it. It worked fine for what it was. I mean, if you have just a surround sound, a PlayStation, and a Sky on it, it's brilliant. It works. It does everything you need it to. But when you've got 12 plus units there, all battling for space, it's really hard to get it to work. And so I thought, right, screw this. I need to design a new unit. The best way to do that is to start with some guidelines. Guideline 1. It has to be a display unit. You can't just cram everything in. I want to be able to have decent cable management options. And I want it to be basically accessible to everything. So those 3 guidelines basically I had to think about every single time I thought of an idea. And my first idea was to have just shelves along the wall and have them deep enough so you can put units on them. Now, the first idea, it's good to look at. The problem is there are several problems with it. One, if I've got 5 units on a shelf and I get another one that I want to put out, if I slide them all along and put another one there, that's a slippery slope back to square one because you're starting to just cram things in for the sake of cramming them in. Number 2 is cable management. Obviously I want to hide the cables, I want to keep it nice and neat and tidy, so I'd have to have holes in the back of the unit and have the cables running down underneath and behind so they'd be hidden. That's fine, that would work because I can't go behind them, so I have to go under. But if I was to move something, I'd have to undo all those cables and find a new way to route them, which can be a pain in the arse. Thirdly, that wall that's behind it is not capable of holding an arm with a 40-inch screen on it. So that's a few issues. Now I did think about putting vertical dividers, but they have to be uniform, otherwise it looks scruffy. So basically, vertical and horizontal, all uniformed, you're basically building cubes. So I thought, fine, great. Cube units, can I get them online? Yes. Sweet. However, those cube units online are not designed for this purpose. I've measured out every unit to figure out how much space I needed. So I've got all the widths down here, and in fact this isn't even the final one. The final one's actually an Excel sheet. But the widest ones you get, with the exception of the Mega CD2, because that's 16 inches wide, it's huge. And for this purpose I was just ignoring that for the time being. 13 inches is the largest. So that's your original Xbox. That's your Xbox 360. They're very wide units. And in fact, later on I got the CD32, which was almost as wide, but you had to add a little bit because you had the controller ports on the side. So 13 inches is the widest. Now, I need some cubes that are 13. The problem being, most of the ones you can get online are not that big. And even if I found one that was that big, you then have the opposite end of the spectrum. You have stuff like the Super Nintendo, the GameCube, the Dreamcast. They're all very small. So if I put that in this 13-inch or 14-inch cube, it'll get lost. The other problem with them all being the same size like that is I don't have the space. I'm very limited on the space. In fact, I've got here, this is the door to the room. The room is vaguely this shaped, and it's in the roof, so it's at an angle. So anything from there onwards, you can't actually fit the unit in. In fact, you can't fit it there. Now the TV has always been in this corner, and most of the room is worked around the fact that there is a TV there. So I'm going to keep the TV there. And this is the unit as it is now, going across this angle. TV's always gone in this corner at that angle, so I'm going to keep that way. So I'm limited in space, and 14 inches cubes, if I had 4 of them along, it would just be too big. So I was thinking, right, okay, I'll have 2 centre ones at 14s and some outside ones at lesser. So I figured out by using a little quick thing. Again, I've got the Mega CD2 on there. I'm just ignoring that for the minute. So I started off at 6 inches, worked up to 13, which is obviously the widest one, with the exception of the CD, and then put in which ones go where. Now you can see I've got 4 of them immediately that are above, that are 12 inches and over. So those 4 will be in the centre. And then I can take a couple of these 11 inches and put them in there as well. And I'll bear in mind I've got the top of the unit as well, because I've already got in my head a cube unit. It's going to be 3 high, 4 wide. Brilliant. And then using this, I managed to figure out that the other 2 sides I think needed to be about 11 inches wide. Cool. So that's that sorted out. So by noting down how wide I need them, I can figure out how wide the unit will be. I also need to think of height. Now, I figured out all these heights through basically what the maximum I'd need is. And the highest, the height I've set for my unit is only 9 inches. Now, that's basically excluding the Mega Drive Mega CD 32X, because that is, I mean, that physically will not fit in the unit, in the unit as it is now. So that's on top, because it's just a monster. It's huge. It's also quite a focal point if it's on top. So I've decided to leave that again, because it's the only one that's going to be that physically large. So basically the next one down is the GameCube with the Game Boy player on it. Allowing it for opening up, 9 inches is about right. So I've figured out my width on how wide they're going to be using these details. Figured out the height based on, because I want it all to be uniform. The next step is the depth. Now the depth was basically dictated by the Xbox 360, because I've got one of the original ones which is quite deep, and then it's got this monstrous power plug on the back. Now thankfully I was able to route that cable through to the back of the unit where the power brick is, because that thing is just huge, and I wouldn't be able to fit it in the unit. So after I had all these measurements down and I figured out vaguely what it was going to look like, I don't think, and you can see I've gone through a few different options of rearranging where I was going to put things, whether or not I could fit them all in and what have you. I then decided, right, I need to think about building this. So I need to look at the materials I need. I know how high it is, how high each unit, each cube needs to be. I know how wide each cube needs to be. I know how deep it needs to be. I have access to certain bits of wood throughout a period of time I've gathered them. So I've got tongue and groove for the back. That's sturdy, makes it sturdy. And the top was going to be the issue though, because everything else is going to be painted. I already figured that out. But the top, I decided I didn't want to paint it. And the way I did the top is just by coincidence. I had my nan, her old dressing table, which is a section with 2 pedestals and 1 big long top. And I decided to take the top off, because the pedestals actually went a long time ago and the top was being used various places at the desk one period of time. I measured it out. Now the depth will be fine, and the width was going to be tight, depending on how thick the wood I used was. So I started looking at all the wood I had stacked up in the garage, and I came across a variety of bits that were, a certain thickness. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. So taking that into consideration, how many I had, measured it all out, figured out that I'll still have a little overhang on the top, on the side. So at this point, I know how tall it's going to be, I know how deep it's going to be, I know how wide it's going to be. I wanted to raise it off the ground a bit, because if you just put something straight on the ground, it does look a bit odd. I wanted there to be a bit of a plinth. So I found these, I think it was like 2x2 blocks of wood, and I used them as feet. So the unit itself, let's find me a blankish bit of paper. That'll do. And go. So the unit itself is going to sit like that. So the top actually overhangs a slight bit on the side, which works really well. I wanted there to be a plinth on the bottom, and I happened to find these bits of 2x2 that I stuck on the bottom. 3, so if you have the unit, you've got a foot there, a foot there, a foot there, and then one there and one there. Now they don't look too pretty, and if I'm honest, before I painted it, I've got a picture of it I'll put up. You can see it doesn't look tremendously pretty because it's bare pine. The pine is all second hand, with the exception of I think 2 bits. It's all second hand, so it's not tremendously clean. And the actual cutting of it, the only saw I got is actually a pretty old saw. So the cuts aren't exactly straight. The blade does tend to wobble a little bit. So this isn't going to look pretty, but that's not too much of an issue. I can fill it and then paint it. And these feet need to be hidden. And I managed to find this plinth. It's actually supposed to be on the ceiling, but flip it upside down and it works really well. Now, that's all very well and good. And when I was designing and thinking about this, I was going on YouTube and Instagram and Google and Facebook and all sorts of that, just looking for people's ideas. Now I came up with a few ideas myself, like the size of the cubes and everything, but how I did this was actually, I'll explain in a minute how I got the idea of step by step through all of this, as in this much detail. One of the things I did find out by going on Instagram and Google and everything is that a lot of people were using cube units, which is fantastic. It means my idea is not unique, that's fine, but it means the idea works. One thing I did find though is a lot of people were using lights, and I thought that's brilliant. That helps to alleviate the issue I was having to begin with about it being very dark and you can't make out the consoles. The consoles are fantastic to look at. I mean, everyone's got each console has its own characteristic. Everyone's got their favourite one. So I thought, yeah, putting lights in it, got a cube unit, sorted. And I knew I was going to paint it, and I was going to paint it initially all black. But I was a bit torn on how I was going to do that, because black is dark. Even if I have lights in the unit, it still is dark. And I happened to watch a video on YouTube by a YouTube channel and a guy called 16-Bit Ghost. Now, if you know his stuff, you know that this unit looks a lot like his. And for the most part, I came up with this unit myself. However, the colour, the internals, those red bits, I got that idea from him. He was the inspiration for that. His unit is obviously a lot bigger than mine. He's got a lot more space. But the principle is the same. He's done the same thing. In fact, this is where I got all this from. Measuring them out, each individual one out, and then figuring out, well, how it's going to work. He did a video and he explained how he did it, and I took that idea and then made it my own for my own units, for my own design. And it's because of him that unit looks the way it does, because of that red. Because red is a nice deep colour. It's different from the consoles. It's quite vibrant, quite warm and inviting. And yet, if you got the lights on, you got this nice red glow underneath, it's not going to distract you from the TV, which is something I did want to utilise. I didn't want a blue, because blue is quite a distracting colour. Your brain notices blue quite quickly. That's why ambulance, firemen, the police, they all use blue because if they got the sirens coming on and they're coming up behind you, your brain will notice that a lot quicker. Whereas red is the opposite end of the spectrum, or the visual spectrum, and it's the least noticeable. That's why they use it in darkrooms for photography. That's why they use it in submarines, because it's not quite as noticeable. So that's how that unit came to be that colour, and hopefully you'll understand how I've come to build this. The unit itself is built out of solid pine. The back is tongue and groove, it's solid pine again. This unit actually turned out to be a lot more stable than I anticipated. I could, if I wanted to, get up and jump around on it and it won't budge. It's surprisingly well built, and I kind of, whilst I was building it, was trying to figure the best way to do it, and obviously I've come up with something that works, so that's always a bonus. But that's a quick look at the rough design of the unit, rough idea of how I came up with it and how it's worked for me. And I will do another video about the top half of the unit, which you may or may not have seen. In fact, I don't think I've put it on this YouTube channel yet, so I'll have to do another video just explaining what I did there. But that's it. That's a quick video. Well, not that quick, but quick enough, hopefully. If you have any comments, questions or anything, please leave them below, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thank you.